Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
G'day guys, welcome to this live stream. I'm very excited and proud to announce that we've hit 10,000 subscribers. This is an insane milestone for me. I grew up in a small country town with a population of about 2,500. So to have 10,000 people subscribe to and tune into my channel is an absolutely phenomenal achievement. I'm so proud, and I couldn't have done it without all of you guys who help share the content that I produce and then talk about it and all those sorts of things. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for the support that you guys give. And what I want to do as a way of celebrating this occasion is have a couple drinks with you guys. I've got some Jack Daniels on the go here. Put some more gold trim on these two Venom crawlers. You guys sat through a couple of hours of me putting gold trim on a Helldrake the other day, so I'm sure a couple Venom crawlers is nothing too outlandish. And I also want to talk a little bit about a few different bits and pieces. I've got a giveaway that I'm going to do to celebrate this occasion, where I'm going to be giving away 2 sets of, which camera's the best? These ones here probably, or this one here. Log for the Blood God dice. And basically the way I'm going to do this is whoever asks the most interesting question in this live stream is going to get those dice. So let me know whatever you guys want to know, any questions you've got, no matter how outlandish, no matter how ridiculous, chuck them in the comments section below. Let's have some fun with this. Let's have a bit of a weird conversation. It doesn't have to be too much about, like, you know, what's your meta choice on this or whatever. Like, if you want to ask those questions, by all means, do so. But yeah, the most interesting question is going to win those dice. And then what I'll probably do at some stage throughout this is talk about my predictions, my thoughts on the upcoming Chaos Space Marine Codex. So you will have noticed that I've been covering pretty much exclusively World Eaters for a long time now. Basically, when the Chaos Space Marines got that big nerf in the most recent balanced data slate, they sort of became completely unviable in the competitive scene, and I know most of you that watch my channel are people who participate in tournaments in the competitive scene, so I wanted to keep it relevant for you guys, and World Eaters have been particularly relevant for a while now. They've been doing quite well, so I basically wanted to pivot onto the World Eaters. But with the new Chaos Space Marine Codex coming out, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of content to cover, so maybe sharing some predictions on that, getting your predictions in the comments, and having a bit of a conversation there. Because obviously, with 8 detachments which has been announced, there's going to be some crazy stuff in there. So yeah, at some stage we'll get talking about that. We'll talk about the updates for the channel. We'll talk about those bits and bobs. Now, as always, I like to give a disclaimer at the start of these sorts of videos. I am so far from tech savvy that it's ridiculous. So I've got my phone here with the chat live, so I'll be checking that every now and then. Make sure you let me know in the chat if anything goes down. I should be all fine because the cameras are all plugged in. The microphone is plug and play now. It's no longer battery operated, so I shouldn't have any issues there. But who knows? I'm a ridiculous man when it comes to technology. I'm really bad with it. And as a result, I don't even know for sure that you can hear me right now. So, yeah, let me know if anything goes wrong with that. That'd be greatly appreciated. If you're, kicking back and it's not a work day, or you're not at work, or it's not the morning, grab a drink. If you're in Australia, it's a good time. Grab a drink, let's kick back and let's talk some 40k. There's also one thing that I want to test with this live stream as well. Just because I quite enjoy doing these, because it's a good motivation for me. I would never paint the trim on these fucking things, ever. But if I'm doing a live stream, I don't know whether it's ADD or whether it's some high-functioning mental disorder, but I can have a conversation much more fluidly with a camera when there's nobody on the other side if I'm painting something simultaneously. It's this weird thing where I need to be doing 6 things at once, or I can't do any of them. You lock me in a room and tell me to paint the trim on these, even if there's something on TV, I'm going to go mental. But if you tell me to simultaneously manage a live stream whilst checking comments, whilst drinking Jack Daniels, whilst talking tactics and strategies about a complex game, then, and only then, can I paint the trim on these fucking things. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that, and the reason I bring that up is because I'm looking to do these live streams a little bit more often. You guys seem to enjoy them, I enjoy them. To be honest, it's very easy content to produce because I don't have to edit it. All of the editing stuff is built into the stream, so, I'm hoping to do it a little bit more often. So with that in mind, I want to test out a few different things. So one of the things I'm testing, obviously, is the multiple cameras setup. This is something I use for tactics stuff as well, but doing it with a live stream so I can do the painting of the hobby and you can see what I'm doing there whilst, looking at my ugly mug is something I'm testing. And the other thing that I'm testing is being able to cut to ads. So I'm going to attempt that now, just while I get sort of set up. So I'm just going to cut to a real quick ad and we'll see how that goes. So let's chuck on... Whoop. That's already not working. Let's chuck on Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today. Alright, looks to me like that worked. So that's fantastic. So I've got my paint here. I'm going to get stuck in. That gold is getting a bit dried up. Let's have a quick look at the comments that we've got so far. Just a reminder to everyone that the best, most interesting question is going to win a set of dice. I've got 2 sets here, a black and a red. Best question is going to get both, so you're going to get 50 dice, which is plenty for a World Eaters player. So we've got a couple questions here. So we've got congrats on the 10,000, amazing achievement. We've got audio and video good. What are these models just joined, and another grats on the 10,000. So thank you very much for the congratulations. I'm super proud of the 10,000 and I'm glad that it's something noteworthy. These guys are Venom Crawlers, which are the CSM, so they're not a World Eaters unit. I bought these guys back before CSM even had a codex, and I was like, oh yeah, Venom Crawlers, I'll paint them up as my... before World Eaters had a codex. Thought I'd buy them, build them, paint them to match the rest of my World Eaters army, and now they're not even a World Eaters unit, so, but it is what it is. I still, when I run CSM, I run my World Eaters models, and I just use them. So, like, I've got a Disco Lord, I've got, all the different Raptors and Bikers and all the things that are not eligible to be played with the World Eaters. I've got them all painted in World Eaters colours, so I just keep adding to it, and it's like, yeah, fuck it. So yeah, the reason these guys haven't been painted yet is because when am I ever going to use... I've got 1 done, when am I ever going to use 3 Venom Crawlers, so... Maybe in the new CSM Codex, when that comes out, that could be an interesting opportunity. But yeah, so I'm going to start throwing some trim on these. First person to get in with a question is going to get some serious attention on that question, because I didn't start this stream with anything in particular that I wanted to discuss. The main things that I wanted to discuss were the 10,000 subscribers, which is such an awesome and exciting moment in this channel's history. So I wanted to discuss that a little bit. But then I was kind of just open to whatever questions you guys have. So I guess what might be interesting, given that this is a 10,000 subscriber special, an interesting place to start, it might be just a really brief sort of history of the channel and history of myself as a competitive gamer, because I know, there's lots of people that have been joining over the years, 10,000 of them, of course, and they may not all know my personal history of my journey. So I grew up in a very small country town in Australia, in rural Victoria, with a population of about 2,500. So to be at a 10,000 subscriber rate is wild to me, because the concept of 10,000 people just doesn't fucking register in my mind. I do now live in Melbourne, so obviously, which is the capital city of Victoria, which has got, I think last time I checked, it was about 3 or 4 million people lived here. But yeah, just going from those sort of humble beginnings, raised by a single mum with a brother and a sister, and my brother got me into 40k when I was in grade 5, so that's like, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old, and I'm now 34, turning 35 soon, so it's been 20 odd years that I've been playing 40k. We originally did it with there was the battle box that had those Gretchen that had their guns like strapped to their chest like this, and Space Marines that had their guns strapped to their chest, like really rigid old models. Not sure what edition it was. I think it was second, maybe. But yeah, we fell in love with the game, and it was a really good way to like bring me and my brother together, because young brothers, there's always fighting and animosity and all those sorts of things, but being able to bring us together with the game was fantastic. So 40k served as not only just an expression of like creativity and sort of strategic and tactical expression, but also just as like almost like a bonding family time. So yeah, so that's sort of the wellspring that my passion came from. And we used to, back in the day, because we grew up relatively poor, we single mum, that's what happens, we used to get like the old cereal boxes, and we would cut out like circles to represent the bases of our units, and then we would just play like on the lounge room floor or on the dining table, moving little circles around to represent the models, with these aspirations of one day being able to save up enough money to buy an army. And then it was like pretty much every Christmas and every birthday, it was just like all we wanted was Warhammer. And the problem is it came in at such a slow rate that we didn't build up an army. It was like, I got a box of Necrons, and then next minute the Tau come out, and I get a box of Tau, and then the next minute the next thing comes out, and I'm jumping all over the place. I found World Eaters when I was 18 or 19. I'd just moved out of home and living in a rental with my girlfriend at the time, and that's when I started collecting the World Eaters. And there was a period there where I was looking at Space Wolves and World Eaters, and I was young bloke, hobby store, and I was like, I remember these from when I was kids, because obviously when you're young you get into it, out of it sort of thing. And I remember seeing a box of Space Wolves and a box of Khorne Berserkers, and I was looking at those and I was like, oh, I love Space Marines, but which flavour of Space Marines do I want to run? Do I want to run the Berserkers or the World Eaters? And I decided to go with the Berserkers, the World Eaters, instead of the Space Wolves, sorry, because I was looking at the Space Wolves and I was like, oh yeah, cool Viking dudes, that's cool, I love that. And this is the front box on the shelf with all the grey hunters and whatnot. And I was like, that's really cool, they're all Viking-like, and they got these frost axes, and I'm like, that's sick. And I picked up that box prepared to buy it, and then I looked at the box behind it, and it was Thunderwolves. And I was like, there's dudes riding dogs? And I was like, ugh, that's cringe. So I put it back on the shelf. And then I picked up the Berserkers, and I was like, these are fucking sick. And then I looked behind them, and there was like Blood Crushers, there was like Juggernauts, And I was like, that's sick. You know, that's so much cooler than riding a dog. So I was like, yep, I'm sold. And I looked at like the frost axes were cool, but then I was like, you know what's cooler than a frost axe? A fucking chainsaw axe. Which, you know, slight tangent here. The chain axe has to be the most 40k thing imaginable, right? Like, the whole concept of a chainsaw is it doesn't require impact, right? You just hold it against the thing, and the spinning blades does the work, right? And then the whole idea of an axe is you have more weight at the top to make it a greater impact. So these two things are completely at odds with each other. There's no point having a greater impact when you're using a chainsaw. So it's just stupid. Whereas, like, I understand a chain sword, because that, you know, that's something that you could hold against them. You know, because swords were more of a slicing weapon than an impact weapon. So, I don't know, there's something about the chain axe that just really tickles me, and it just makes me laugh every time I see one. So that's why I've got the two up on the wall behind me, because it just reminds me that... It kind of reminds me that 40k is something that's not to be taken too seriously. I think a lot of people get way too worked up on it. And it's like, you do realize that it's like... It's actually fucking ridiculous, the whole concept of this fucking game. And the chain axe sort of... Yeah, it really speaks to me. But yeah, so I've basically been playing World Eaters ever since, and I've been slowly collecting over the years. There was a period there where I sort of made the decision to never sell my World Eaters. Like, I'd buy and sell other stuff, but the World Eaters I'd just keep adding to the collection. Because there was one point where I can't remember what it was. I think it was Defilers. That, like, I sold them, and then we got a new codex, and they were really good in the new codex, and I was really disappointed that I sold them. So I was just like, nah, never again. I'm just going to keep adding to the collection. If something gets, you know, if something's not performing the way I want it to, and I want to change it out, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to buy other stuff, and then I'll have it there, so that if I ever decide I need it again, I can always jump back on it. And now, over the years, I've basically got enough to run 3 of almost everything in both the Chaos Space Marines and the World Eaters. I've got 30 Raptors, 30 Warp Talons, 30 Bikers. You know, I've got more Terminators than is possible to be fielded. You know, I've got 100 Khorne Berserkers, which is more Berserkers than you can possibly field. You know, I've got just absolutely ludicrous amounts of stuff, and that was all born from the idea that, you know, if you sell it and then turns out you want it at a later date, you can't use it. So, yeah, basically been playing World Eaters ever since then. As for the channel itself, the inspiration behind that was that I was living in a country town where the only person that played was my brother, and me and my brother had a little bit of a falling out, and as a result, I didn't really get to play with him anymore. So I would, like, every now and then I would travel into Melbourne to be involved in you know, games day or something, but I didn't really know anyone in Melbourne. You know, everybody that I knew was you know, from the country town. So as a result, I sort of didn't get much opportunity to play, much opportunity to talk to people about Warhammer or anything like that. So I decided what I'd do is just start a Facebook page where I could basically post pictures of what I'm working on, and that way when I do go down to Melbourne, if I'm not bringing it all with me, I could at least show people pictures and be like, hey, this is my page, and this is all the shit I'm working on. So that's where that all sort of started. And then it just blew up from there. Like, I just, you know, people really liked it. People started sharing it. You know, this is back in the old days of Daka and the various forums before we had, you know, YouTube and all those sorts of things popping off. So, and then, yeah, I started a YouTube channel because one of my mates wanted to come down and do a battle report with me. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure we can figure that out. And we did a battle report together. Had an awesome time. And then the rest is kind of history. So I guess that kind of feeds into the, like, the spirit of the channel, if you will. Like, this channel, you'll notice there's a lot of talk on here about, you know, competitive gaming, competitive 40k, and that is my prime focus. But realistically, the underpinning of that is that I just want to be social. This is a social expression for me. I just realized I'm painting these where you can't bloody see them. But this is like a social expression for me more than anything else. And the only reason that it's competitively focused is because I'm personally competitively focused. But you'll notice there's apocalypse games on this channel. There's all kinds of different stuff because I enjoy all aspects of the hobby, and I try to acknowledge them all, not equally, but at least acknowledge them all somewhat. And yeah, that's sort of where the channel was born, was through a desire to make friends and share my passion. So yeah, that's some good context. I think we've got a whole bunch of comments here, which is fantastic to see. So just another reminder before I read into these comments, reminder that we have got these 2 sets of dice. Whoever asks the coolest question or the funniest question or whatever's going to inspire the most interesting conversation, whoever asks that question is going to pick up that set, and I'll post them out on Monday. So yeah, let's have a quick look at the questions that people have asked, and then I need to open a new gold because that one's just shit itself. So give us 2 seconds. What I might do while I have a quick look at this is I might just chuck on, talking of apocalypse, this is and talking about the years of collecting and all of the stuff that I've collected. Here's a quick glimpse at my personal collection and the apocalypse game that we recorded for YouTube. What, 6-7 months ago, something like that. Yeah, check this out. Alrighty guys, hope you enjoyed that little quick break where we've showed off some of the collection here. We're going to run through some questions now. So there's plenty of content in this chat, so great work. If you want to make sure that your comment gets read, you can do a paid comment. You can just throw $1 at it, and that'll bring it to the top and make sure that I don't miss it, because I get the feeling that this comment section is going to get filled up pretty fast. The last thing I want to do is overlook a important or interesting question. So if you've got a question that you really do want to make sure gets read, chuck $1 on it, or I'm not even sure if you might even be able to just do 1 cent. I'm not sure how the YouTube section of this works, but if you make it a super chat or a donation comment or whatever they call it, that'll bring it to the top and make sure I don't miss it. So let's have a quick look at some of the comments. We got Alex saying he'll soon join the Blood God. We bought a World Eater's Christmas box and haven't got around to it. It's a great time to get around to it, mate. No time like the present. We got Dale Kilpatrick. Prediction for the World Eaters Codex, especially what do you think we are lacking? Yep, that's a good question. I might touch on that in a minute. I'll quickly go through and catch up on all of these questions and then we'll touch base. Adam Smith, is there any Chaos unit that you refuse to paint again because of the trim? And when will you run out of momentum to paint more trim? That's a fantastic question. What do you think your most memorable moment whilst playing 40k game is? Good. Amazing work. Cornflakes. Congrats on the 10k. Hobby question: thoughts on corn stuff not being red and brass? Any colors you would explore? That's a fantastic question. Boyd saying, "Crats, mate. Thank you." Hoping for the CSM codex. If I had to pick a Xenos army to play for a year, what would it be? Yikes, a whole year of Xenos. No thanks. Alright, that's a good question as well. I'll hit that. Any tips for newish players wanting to get into teams events? That's great. And then we've got Dalton saying congratulations. And yeah, those Apocalypse games deserve more love. That was a lot of fun. 100%. So those Apocalypse games, we put a ridiculous amount of effort into setting them up, filming them, recording them, editing them. I had guests on from other prominent channels. We put a lot of work into them. And I was thinking that they were going to be really highly viewed, because my previous most viewed video was an Apocalypse Battle Report. That was really poor quality. It was ages ago, and it was kind of meh. So we decided we were going to do this epic thing where it was a series of battles, tens of thousands of points on each side. Absolutely epic. We thought they were going to really pop off, and then they kind of just died in the water. Like, when they were released, they just got no views. I don't understand why. I think it's probably because my audience has tilted more towards the competitive 40k and less around that sort of narrative stuff, but that was quite disappointing. So if you want to show them some love, they are absolutely fantastic content, so go check those out. Cool, so a few questions here that popped out to me that were really interesting were the predictions for the World Leaders Codex, the whether or not I'm sick of painting trim, memorable moments from 40k, CSM Codex predictions, team events, and whether or not I could play a Xenos army for a year. I guess the Xenos army is the first one that's probably easiest to get into. I've currently own about maybe 6,000 points worth of Tau and a whole bunch of Tyranids and a bunch of Necrons as well. Now the Tau I bought back in the day when I was tired of playing World Eaters. I'd played nothing but combat for like 6 years, and I was tired of failing charges. I was tired of just getting shot before I made it into combat. So I basically bought a Tau army so that I could play the opposite side of the coin. I was like, what's the furthest away from World Eaters? I want to play that. So I bought this big Tau army. I won a few decent sized events with them, and they were very, very good, but it was a thoroughly unenjoyable way to play the game. So I was like, you know what, as hard as it can be to play combat, I prefer it. So with that in mind, the Xenos faction that I would want to play would have to be something that's heavily combat oriented, something that's all about getting stuck into melee. So it might be Tyranids with like a whole bunch of warriors and raveners and just combat gribblies, or it might be Drakari. Yeah, I don't really like Eldar. There's something about most of the Xenos factions that just feel kind of like weak. Like Tau are kind of like weaklings. The Drakari and Eldar are kind of weaklings. Maybe it's fucking orcs, actually. Maybe it's actually orcs. Yeah, the more I think about it, it is definitely orcs. If you said I had to play a Xenos faction for a year, I would go from being that guy that screams Blog for the Blood God at tournaments to the guy that screams Wah. They're the closest thing to Khorne, the closest thing to the playstyle. Yep, lock it in. Orcs is the answer to that fantastic question. Tips for newish players wanting to get into team events. Now, the thing about team events is you've got to be socially adept, which is something that I struggled with at the start. And one of the things I love about 40k is it really helps people who struggle socially to actually get involved in social activities. And team events are like the synthesis of the competitive 40k and that social aspect. So my advice, if you want to get involved in team events, is to literally just go to tournaments and just try to make friends, talk to people, find people the same faction as you, talk to them. That's just those sorts of things. Get to know the local community, get involved, offer to help out where you can, whether it be sticking around after a tournament to help pack up, or whether it be, lending people models or whatever you need to do to develop those friendships. And then once you've got those friendships lined up, you can then jump in and start organizing team events and getting involved. So I think Team 40K, I've done so many videos on this, I won't go over the same topic too much, but Team 40K is the best 40K by a large margin. It fixes almost everything that's wrong with 40K. So like one of the things that's wrong with 40K is there's often one faction that's just absolutely dominant and OP. Like you could say Necrons right now. You'll be saying the same about Orcs in a couple weeks. And the good thing about Team 40K is, say you got a team of 8 players, only one player can take Necrons, only one player can take Orcs, which means all of the other factions actually become relevant even though none of them can beat that top faction, because they can beat each other. So forcing that, it actually forces faction diversity in a really interesting way. That's one of the things about team events. The other thing is that there's certain armies that might really struggle in the meta that won't struggle in team events because they can dodge certain matchups. So you can go, cool, I'm going to run, a bunch of Imperial Knights, or I'm going to run 3 Lord of Skulls, or whatever, and then you just go, cool, just don't pair me into people that have tons of anti-tank. And now my army that's in the standard singles meta might be really vulnerable is actually ridiculously strong if you pair it into somebody who doesn't have the tools. So the fact that pairings allows you to navigate that, and the fact that it forces faction diversity, that's already 2 arguments for why Teams 40K is so good. But the other one is the social element, because when you're playing Teams 40K, there's no individual game win or loss, or no individual player win or loss, because it's essentially the results of all players on the team versus the results of all of their opponents. So you can lose your game and still win the round. And you can win your game and still lose the round. And basically what that does psychologically is it takes a lot of the pressure off of that individual game. You're not as focused on your game. Sometimes you'll be the guy that gets paired into the Necrons, and you're like, okay, well, nobody in our team was going to beat that. So it doesn't matter that I lose my game, because I'm basically taking a bullet for the team and allowing them to go in and basically win the round for us. So it softens the blow on those sorts of situations, whereas normally in a singles event, if you get paired into Necrons, you're like, oh, well, now I lose, and it wasn't even my fault, and there's nothing I could have done, and you get that feels bad moment, whereas that is mitigated heavily in the teams format. So yeah, if I could play nothing but teams for the rest of my life, I would. That being said, the drawback to teams is that you have to be able to organize a team, and not everybody can do that. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say just try to become friends with the people in your local meta that, have similar interests. And yeah, it's not that hard because we all play 40K, right? So we all at least have one interest in common. So yeah, getting involved in that is a great way to get involved in team events. What was the other questions on here that were really interesting? A hobby question about corn stuff not being red and brass. Any other colors? So I actually started painting these all my army red and brass like way back, and I actually kind of regretted it now, but I'm so deep into it. I have so much painted in red and brass that it's just too late for me to change the scheme. If I could go back, I would probably do like a bone color as the base, and then like red inside the shoulder pads, so they're all kind of bone sort of color. Because the good thing about that is then you can use it as anything. You can mix it in with anything. So you can run World Eaters, but you can go, I'm going to take the Rhino out of my World Eaters army and run it with my Emperor's Children. But your Emperor's Children you've painted in the same scheme, which is just bone color, right? And Emperor's Children in bone color, that kind of works, and Death Guard in bone color kind of works. So that's one way to look at it. The other way is to do them all black with bone-colored trim, and it's like it's kind of Black Legion, but it's not Black Legion. It can be any Legion. It can be anything. It works with Nurgle and Tzeentch and, Slaanesh and Khorne. It works with everything. If I could go back, that's 100% what I would do, is I would paint them all so that they are some kind of variation on that, so that it can be infinitely expanded in every direction. Instead, I've got this thing where it's like I've got all these World Eaters. It's like, well, if I want to run Emperor's Children, am I going to paint the Noise Marines red and gold? Probably not. But if I want to put noise marines in a rhino, am I going to put them in one of my red and gold rhinos? Probably not. So it's this kind of weird thing where I'm sort of basically stuck at a point where it's like, okay, cool, my army either has to be not cohesive or I have to not run certain units. And that limiting factor is not ideal. So that's what I would do. I'm actually not a huge fan of, and I've noticed this has been creeping up a lot lately. Maybe it's the new codex has spawned this, but people running the blue and white world is. I understand that people want to be different and they want to deviate from the red and gold. 100% understand that, and I share that sentiment. I agree, but I feel like the going to the pre-heresy colors just kind of doesn't work for me. First of all, it doesn't. I don't think it looks right. It just doesn't look. They don't look evil. They don't look Khorne-like. Even when they are splattered with blood, it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't fit for me. And narratively, like when they turn to Khorne, they all change the color of their armor. So it's like, I know 40K's the lore is so rich that there's going to be a pocket of world leaders that didn't change their armor, right? There's pockets of world leaders that did all sorts of stuff, right? You can come up with whatever narrative you want. But yeah, just for me, it just feels kind of like if you're going to be creative and deviate from the norm, do it in an interesting way. You know, not just go, oh cool, I'll just pick this other alternative scheme that exists for them. Not trying to like rag on the people that do that scheme. By all means, you do you. It's not for me. I'm much more of a fan of the red and gold. I'm a big fan of just like box art style color schemes, because then it really does look and feel like the faction that people imagine when they hear it. You know, when people picture world leaders, that's what they're picturing. So it helps with the immersion of the game, I think, if what you're doing is, you know, consistent with most people's internal image. Whereas if you're running something that's like pink world leaders or whatever, it's like, it's kind of just looks weird and wrong. But yeah, that's my thoughts on what colors I'd do. Is there any chaos unit that you refuse to paint again because of the trim? And when will you run out of momentum to paint more trim? I have done the trim now on 3 Helldrakes, and I have never hated life more than when painting the trim on that 3rd Heldrake. That being said, like I said at the start of this stream, the fact that I'm able to paint the trim whilst talking to you guys makes it so much easier. Like, I've nearly finished the trim on this guy, and I've been barely paying attention. You know, I'm paying attention to the conversation, paying attention to the stream, and as a result, it's just time flies, right? It'd be very different if I was sitting at home on my own, which, I mean, technically I am, but it feels like I'm here with you guys, right? And if I had no form of entertainment, just, you know, listening to a podcast or something, trying to paint the trim, I think I would really, really struggle with that. So whether or not I'll run out of momentum, I guess as long as I have this channel, and as long as you guys are prepared to entertain me with interesting questions, you know, during the live streams, I don't think I'll ever run out of stream for painting trim. I do, however, often fantasize about 3D printing a World Leaders army, or 3D printing every model that I think about and removing the trim from the sculpt and just painting, you know, like I always get really jealous when I see loyalists and they've got their just basic painted, it's like spray it green, null oil over the top, boom, Dark Angels. It's like, I'm so jealous of that because we have to spend all this time. And the problem is I don't even think the trim necessarily makes it look better. Like, it's definitely makes it look a little bit more detailed and whatnot, but the beautiful thing about having no trim is you can spend all that time doing edge highlighting. You can do fun stuff that feels, you know, rewarding, as opposed to just sitting there, you know, rocking back and forth in your chair, painting the same trim on the same model over and over and over. I recently repainted 100 Khorne Berserkers that I had painted, like, you know, 15 years ago when the Berserker kit came out. And, you know, I'd wanted to update them for my, you know, current scheme and my current army. And Jesus fuck was that laborious. And it's like, if I was able to just respray them, that would have been so easy. So I do definitely run out of steam on occasion, but I can always pick it back up. And yeah, as long as you guys are happy to entertain me while I do it, then I don't see myself ever stopping. And I think the same sentiment goes for the channel, right? Like, some people ask me, like, when am I going to just continue doing YouTube forever? I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and there's been times where I'll stop for months and months on end, and then I'll pick it back up. And I think part of the success of this channel is the fact that I just never stop. Even when I've stopped, I'll never like properly give up. I'll always be doing this. I don't ever see I can see myself being a 80-year-old man sitting there talking about, oh, remember back in 7th edition when you could make these Death Stars by putting all these different characters in your units? Like, I can see myself doing that, and the younger generation will be like, dude, we don't even use models anymore. Everything is just a hologram, or whatever the future holds for 40k, and I'll be that boomer in the corner talking about, the way things used to be. What else have we got here? Predictions for the World Leaders Codex and the CSM Codex. So I'll do a brief overview of my predictions, and then later on, if the questions start drying up or whatever like that, we can do a deep dive on, because I've got an idea on how I want to do a deep dive. So World Leaders Codex, I reckon we're going to get 3 detachments. I think it'll be similar to like the Custodies or the Tau, where it won't be like the Chaos Space Marines with 8 detachments. We'll get 3 detachments. We'll get a couple of new units. I think we'll get more new units than most codexes, because our range is so small and there's so much potential for advancement. We'll probably get Juggernaut riding Berserkers. We'll probably get a Terminator character. We'll probably get a Chaos Lord or like a Butcher Surgeon or something like that. And we might get like 1 Demon Engine of some description as well. That'll probably round it all out. Which will all be really exciting stuff. As for detachments, I'm really hoping we get Dreadclaws and Charybdis. They're currently going through and they're re-releasing a lot of the Forge World stuff in plastic. If they do the Dreadclaw and the Charybdis Assault Claw, and then make that a World Eaters specific unit, they took it away from Chaos Space Marines. If they bring it back as a World Eaters specific thing, that would be so cool, because it's iconic for World Eaters. It's one of the main ways that they engage in battle. It's also one of the coolest Chaos units, because it's a drop pod that goes from spaceship to spaceship and from spaceship to planet, but it has a sentience and it's malicious. So if it doesn't like the people that it's transporting, it just jettisons the cunts into space, which is so cool. Like, imagine hopping in a car that's sentient and might just kill you. It's so cool. So if they make that a thing, that'd be sick. That'd be really, really cool. And then as for detachments, it would be cool to see one where it's like, units that arrive from reserves get +1 to their charge or reroll charges or something like that. Maybe they get +1 to hit, or they get reroll wounds or something like that on a turn that they disembark from a transport, like like a Drakari-esque sort of thing. So something around that. Then something that's just sort of like the one we have now, where it's just your standard +1 strength and attack, and it's sort of built around just like berserkers and that sort of thing. And then another one that's built around Exalted 8-bound, and it sort of really leans into the demonic element of the World Eaters. Maybe they have a whole bunch of ways to manipulate the blessings of Khorne dice, things like that. And that would be the sort of 3 detachments that I'd like to see. One that heavily emphasizes the demons, one that heavily emphasizes the sort of the foot-slogging berserkers, Rhino Rush style game, and then one that goes around, deep striking and charging and that sort of stuff. Perhaps there could be one also that emphasizes demon engines, particularly if we get a new demon engine model. They're going to want to sell a bunch of them. So if they have a detachment where Mauler Fiends, Forge Fiends, Lord of Skulls, this whatever this new demon engine thing could be, the Blood Slaughterer, where those units get some kind of buff, that could be really interesting as well. As for, what was the other question? The Chaos Space Marines Codex. Now, this one obviously is a big release, right? They've already said that there's going to be 8 detachments. So what I was thinking of doing maybe I'll do this once I've finished putting the trim on these guys, is going through the 8th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex, looking at the detachments and stuff in there, and having a conversation about how those could be ported over into 10th edition with minimal sort of upset. So, like, for example, there could be a Creations of Bile detachment that may, instead of being called Creations of Bile, maybe it's just called, like, Horrific Creations or something like that, right? Where it's like, it's obviously Creations of Bile, but it's not. They could make some detachment like that, and then in that detachment, it could be that you get army-wide fights on death on a 4-up. And then they have like a stratagem that allows them to fight on death without needing to roll the 4-up. So that way you've got, this same sort of old style of Creations of Bile play where you're running around, you're happy to jump on objectives because if they fight you, you just fight on death and kill them. That could be one way that they could do their detachments. And then they basically take one of each legion and then recreate them in the new format. That could be really cool. And I'm really hoping that there's some serious combos, because one of the things that for me has always defined the Chaos Space Marine faction is that they've always been really good at having combos where it's like, if you take this guy with this enhancement, it used to be this relic, this warlord trait, this guy, and that stratagem, and you could just go boom and just kill the shit out of things, right? So obviously you're now limited to one enhancement per guy, so you can't give them a warlord trait and a relic. But if they have some kind of, really cool stratagem that pairs well with a guy who's attached to a unit that gets to do something special, that could be really cool. Like, Master of Executions gets reroll hits when he's attached to a unit, and then if he goes, cool, he's rerolling hits, and then there's something that gives him critical hits on a 5+, maybe that's an enhancement. And then, there's a Pact of Flesh, which gives you +1 to your, crits, so now you're critting on a 4+, or something like that, where it's like you just get one guy that just goes absolutely mental. That's the sort of stuff I like in my Chaos Space Marines. Or something where it's like, cool, you take this Terminator unit, you add Abaddon, maybe you can add, something else to the unit as well, or something like that, where you go, cool, maybe there's a nearby unit that can do a buff, like perhaps there's like the Librarian Dreadnought for Blood Angels, how he can pick a friendly unit within range and teleport that unit, like he throws it, something like that. So you can go, cool, Abaddon in Terminators, and then you've got a sorcerer behind with a relic that allows him to pick up that unit and deep strike it, so you can deep strike Abaddon's unit on him. That'd be really cool, and that could be something like a Black Legion relic to replace the old Dark Matter Crystal, or no, what was it called? Jesus, I can't remember the name of the relic. That used to be a Black Legion relic. I played it for like years, and I can't remember the name of the relic. But yeah, the one that used to allow you to teleport Black Legion Terminators. That's embarrassing that I can't remember that. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff I'd like to see for Chaos Space Marines. So perhaps if I still have any sanity left after painting the trim on all these guys, we'll pull out the old codex and dig through it and talk about it. Or if not, I'll save that for a future live stream and we can do that together. That actually just reminded me, one of the comments I just said is that, if I have any sanity left, one of the things that got me into Chaos Space Marines in the first place was the game Dawn of War. I'm sure you've all played it. But there's a comment in there where one of the Chaos Space Marines says sanity is for the weak. And when I heard that, I was like, that is the most based thing I've ever heard. Like, sanity is for the weak. That's a fucking awesome thing to say. So that was part of what sold me on the Chaos Space Marines. I was like, yep, these are my guys. Whereas the Space Marines are a bit too pompous for me, and the Eldar are a bit too sort of feeble and also kind of pompous, and it's just not for me. Whereas Chaos Space Marines, they're my lads. I think that more or less covers the questions that we had there. There's one here that's, what do you think was your most memorable moment whilst playing a game of 40k? That's actually a really hard question. because I've played like more games of 40k than I can count. There's been so many memorable moments that I don't even know where to start to answer that question. One really interesting one that comes to the top of my head was I think this was 7th edition. In 7th edition, there was the Imperial Knights, and what used to happen is when they would die, you would basically roll a scatter dice. You'd roll a dice to see if they explode, and if they did, you'd roll a scatter dice and then place a blast template, in whatever direction, and then everything under that blast template would take a certain amount of damage. I played a bloke who had like 4 Imperial Knights, and I had a bunch of Bloodthirsters, and basically I went in with the Bloodthirster, blew up one of his Imperial Knights, it exploded, that scatter dice landed on another Imperial Knight, that exploded it, that scatter dice went onto another Imperial Knight, hit it, and it exploded. So we've rolled 3 natural 6s and perfect scatters in order to make this chain reaction happening. And this one Bloodthirst has just gone boom and blew up 3 knights in a row. It was fucking wild. So that was a memorable moment. But there's just been so many. One of them was another one that comes to mind was when we developed the technique that got known as pinning, which, like the wheel, I believe this was one of those tricks that was invented in multiple places simultaneously, but I definitely invented it and introduced it to our Australian meta. And basically what happened is I played a guy where he was running Imperial Guard, and he had a 10-man infantry squad, and I didn't know, but he had like a colonel or something in the middle, which was a separate unit, and he was not attached. And I've basically charged them with my Khorne Berserkers. He's got all these guard tanks and stuff in the back. I've charged them with my Khorne Berserkers. I've allocated all my attacks to the infantry squad because I thought that's all that was there, and I've wiped out the squad, right? And then he's picked up all the models and he's left the colonel behind. And I'm like, oh, dude, you've missed one. And he's like, no, that's the colonel. He's a separate thing. And I'm like, oh, well, if I had known he was a separate thing, I would have allocated attacks to him and killed him. And I'm like, but no, that's fair enough, whatever. So I basically just piled in and wrapped around him. And then I realized, well, hang on. Now he's pinned. He's in the middle. He can't move because you can't move over my models, which means you can't shoot my Khorne Berserkers, which means in your turn, I'm going to kill that colonel. And then we're going to go in my turn, and then my Berserkers are free to move and charge other stuff. And I was just like, mind blown, and it was all through this misplay that we sort of developed this trick. And then that became a really critical component of early 8th edition, this was, I believe, where I was like, wow. And then I was like, I wonder how else you could use that. And then we developed the trick of the soft charge, which is basically because in the previous edition, you didn't have to end in base contact. So what you do is you'd make a charge, but you'd only put one model in base contact, and you'd position every other model so that they weren't within an inch of that model, and therefore only one model could attack, and then the rest of the unit would pile around. So if they put out a unit of scouts or something, or it's just a unit of scouts, you would charge like 20 Khorne Berserkers, but you'd make it so only one attacks. He kills like 2 or 3 scouts, there's 2 left, and then you pile around them. And now they can't fall back, which means they can't shoot those 20 Berserkers. Then you tick over to their turn, you kill the thing, and then you got 20 Berserkers in their lines, and you just do the same thing again. And I would just go from like jump from unit to unit to unit, just pinning and wrapping, and it was just absolutely brutal way to play the game. It was so much fun, and it really felt like true innovation. We were coming up with the really interesting techniques on how to beat table games, like how to beat top tier armies with bottom tier armies by using these techniques at tournaments. It was so much fun and so rewarding. So that's definitely one of the more memorable sort of periods of 40k, and it all sparked from that specific game. So yeah, that's a few. What else we got in here? Why are you painting Venom Crawlers red? Just in case they get a sheet in the Codex, or just generally for CSM? So that is something that I mentioned at the start, was that my entire Chaos Space Marine collection was painted red and gold, because I started that before World Eaters got their own Codex. So my entire CSM collection is red and gold, and as a result I've just sort of stuck with it. And the idea there is that I can use the like my World Eaters Rhinos, for example, I can plug them into a Chaos Space Marine list if I decide to run Chaos Space Marines instead of World Eaters, and it remains cohesive. The only downside to that is like I have to paint Psychers red and gold, and I have to paint like Noise Marines red and gold, which doesn't really work. I have experimented with an alternative scheme for those specific units that's bone color with gold trim. So instead of being red and gold and being very obviously corn, because you don't want to have corn Psychers, instead I've sort of got this bone color and gold, so that works pretty well. That's the color I painted all my Noise Marines in. There's a period there where I was considering repainting the whole army to be that color so that it's all still cohesive, but you know that there's so much behind me there, so much to repaint, there's just no chance that that's ever going to happen. But that's why I'm doing Venom Crawlers right now, and that's also why the Venom Crawlers haven't been done. I've had these models sitting on the shelf for quite some time, but I never got around to painting them because it was like, who actually cares about Venom Crawlers right now? Like, you don't need 3 of them. There could be a world where they, you know, maybe in the new Chaos Space Marine Codex, the Venom Crawlers might get some ridiculous buff, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I wish I had 3 of those, and I'll be like, yep, I've got 3 of those. So, that's part of my sort of philosophy at the moment, because a lot of my lists are sort of solved. I have, you know, all the models that I need for the World Eaters armies that I want to play. So, in order to keep my, like, hobby juices flowing, I'm just going, cool, what don't I already have 3 of? I'll just buy those and add to it so that I have 3 of everything. And then once I have 3 of every single model, then I'll have to seriously reevaluate my life and how much time I've spent painting trim. Then it'll probably be, my next project will probably be Traitor Guard. I think that'll be, if or either that or Dark Mechanicus. If I finish all this sort of stuff, and I literally have 3 of every Chaos Space Marine unit, which I'm very close to being able to say I have, then I'll probably do Traitor Guard, because that seems like the logical next step. I might just quickly, I'll chuck on a quick ad, and I'll take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high-quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. I'd like to hear your feedback on those ads and whether or not you enjoy them. I get a little bit of feedback on the Patreon ad that people seem to really like that. My goal with those was to create an ad that's actually an entertainment in itself, because I don't want to just, you know, preach and advertise and try to sell you guys stuff. I want to basically make sure that everything that I do, including the ads, is some form of entertaining content. And I feel like I've achieved that there. Let me know what you think. So we're going into some more comments here. We've got, is it okay to use the old Demon Prince without wings to stand in and differentiate from the Demon Prince with wings? I'm a huge fan of that old metal Demon Prince model. I have a few versions of it, some with wings, some without. if you're asking for like tournament, whether or not it would be acceptable at a tournament, just check with your TO. Every TO has different standards around what they'll accept and what they won't accept. So just send them a picture and be like, hey mate, you happy with me using this as this? And then that should be fine. I'm actually not a huge fan of the new Demon Prince model. It doesn't look Space Marine enough to me. And I guess that's because they're trying to make it fit the Age of Sigmar audience and the 40k audience. But one of the things I really love about the old metal Demon Prince model is that he's one chunky bitch. And he just looks like a Space Marine gone crazy, and I love that. So, yeah, that's my thoughts there. Do you think Lord of Skulls is a good answer for orcs? Probably not. Obviously, we don't have the Orc Codex in our hands yet. Some people do, but, they aren't interested in sharing it with me, so I can't comment for sure. It's looking like there's going to be pretty much no answer to orcs. When they first come out, they're going to be so wildly overpowered that it's just going to be like, tournaments are just going to be won by orcs, and then, maybe there'll be a few top tier players that are able to do something to beat orcs, but generally speaking, for most people, it's going to be oppressive. But GW have a tendency to overreact when that happens, and with any luck, they'll get what they deserve. The balance will be restored through the balanced data slates, and she'll be all good. It will be interesting though to see whether or not that toughness 13 of the Lord of Skulls is a tipping point for them. If that's what we need to do in order to survive their shooting, then that's what we need to do. If I remember correctly though, somebody was saying that they have pretty wide access to reroll hits with lethal hits, which tends to mean that things like the Lord of Skulls isn't the solution that we're looking for. The solution is probably going to be more based around things like 8-bound, or if they've got really low AP across the board, it might be something like Terminators might become a more relevant choice, because that's how we withstand their blows. I don't know. It'll all depend on sort of what the meta sort of settles on in terms of orcs. I will definitely be focusing on that a fair bit though, because obviously planning to continue playing World Eaters, and I don't want to just get manhandled by a bunch of orc players. So I will be working closely with you all to find a solution to the orcs. Team 40k was my favourite, but I've been out of 40k since the start of 8th. As a gamer, I still paint and getting back into 10th a bit. I think 10th is the best edition GW have ever done, and I know that sounds like I'm just fanboying for them, but it really is. It's going to struggle with it when everybody has a codex and therefore the app doesn't have that same utility. But Index Hammer, where everybody's rules were free and available in the app and you could look it all up, the rules were simplified. The rules were simplified, but they're still interesting. There's still plenty of interesting interactions. I really enjoy 10th, so if you did take a dip out, I reckon now is as good a time as any to get back involved in the competitive 40k. So yeah, that's interesting. Risky Rollers Dalton, 100% team events are so much fun and let you experience 40k in an entirely different way to a singles format. It's so true. Teams 40k, I've got the bug hard. So I was first introduced to Teams 40k for Team Victoria, which is my home state. And in Australia, we have kind of a state of origin style event. It's called the Australian and New Zealand Team Championships. And basically, it sort of follows the WTC model, where it's 8-man teams, uses their rules, their player pack, that sort of stuff. But what we do is we have each state of Australia gets to put together a team, and in order to be on the team, you have to be a resident of that state. So no super teams or anything like that. It's like each state puts together their team. And then we basically have a competition to see which state is able to put together the strongest team. We also have New Zealand. They send a North Island and a South Island team. And I was first involved in that, and I caught the bug there hard. I was like, this is so much better than singles events. And now I've got myself involved with Team Australia. Been involved with that for 2 years now. I'm actually currently the captain of Team Australia, which is a really exciting opportunity for me to experience 40k at that highest possible level. Because I genuinely believe that the WTC, the World Team Championships, it is the highest level of 40k. It's much better than any like LVO or any singles event like the WCW. Like, there's something about the World Team Championships that it's kind of like the Olympics of 40k, right? It's like, it's just being able to say that you're an Olympic gold medalist is way better than being able to say you won some like whatever tournament, right? You're obviously talking to a guy who's not a sports guy, so take that with a grain of salt, whether or not that analogy holds. But yeah, I just thoroughly enjoy Team 40k to the point where I'm going to be spending, thousands of dollars that I don't have, because I work in a warehouse. I earn below average salary in Australia. I'm a pretty poor guy, but and every spare cent that I have, I blow on 40k. So it's like, no savings, no plan. I just sort of take life as it goes. And that includes, like, my car's basically on the edge of breaking down. But I'm just going to go to Europe and play 40k. And then when I get back, if my car's broken down, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out then. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And that mentality, has caused me a lot of troubles in life, but it's also solved a lot of my troubles in life because I've developed a pretty good ability to just figure it out. So I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but that's the level of commitment I have to Team 40k, is that I'm like, I would rather potentially cause myself significant challenges in order to be able to go than, operate in some capacity where I'm not creating any significant challenges for myself, but I'm also limiting my opportunities to experience life and do the things that I'm passionate about. So that's my thoughts on Team 40k. We're very close to having our first Venom Crawler done, guys. It's very freaking exciting because this is just the trim, but the trim is the hard part. That's why I always do it first. One of my pieces of advice when people ask me, they ask me, how the hell did you get so much painted? Like, literally, I've got every single model in this room I painted myself, haven't commissioned anything, haven't, got any help along the way, and there is so much here, it is absolutely ridiculous. And the way that I do that is by when I start painting a model, I start with the hardest, most laborious part. And the reason that I do that is because once you've got that part done, your rate of progress goes so fast that you can ride that motivation all the way to the end. Whereas if you start doing the really easy stuff, then you get this momentum, and then you block it by going, now I have to do the really hard bit. You'll get bogged and you'll give up. So always do the trim first. I also like to do bases first, because once the base is done, the model looks so much closer to done than it actually is. And that sort of inspires you to keep going, because you're like, wow, I've done the base and the trim, I'm practically finished, right? Like, it's red, it's got gold trim, and it's on a black and grey base. Like, it's done. It's playable, right? And now you get this massive surge of motivation to go in and finish off those last bits. That is 1 times Venom Crawler with all of his gold trim done. We've got plenty of questions in here, so I'm going to get stuck into them. Just a reminder to everybody that we do have, for those who may have just joined us recently, I'm giving away 2 sets of Blog for the Blood God custom dice, and they are going to the person who asks the most interesting question in this chat. So jump in, ask whatever questions you think are going to be the most thought-provocative, which are going to inspire the most interesting conversation, and I'll send you out a pack of dice tomorrow morning. So let me know what you guys have in terms of questions. There's been some rippers in there already, but I'm all ears. And it doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be, it might be marry, fuck, kill with, Shadow's son, Lilith, and I don't know, Khan the Betrayer. Like, pick 3 people. It could be, there could be any kind of question. It doesn't have to be, anything serious. We're here to celebrate 10,000 subscribers, and I think, having a couple drinks and talking shit is a great way to celebrate. So let's have a look at some other questions, shall we? More people confirming that they like Teams events. Can you write a list that leans into a goal of playing the hardest list with the aims for a draw? That's an interesting question. Oh, geez, there's so many questions here. We've got Dale Kilpatrick was the next one. Oh, apologies. Dale, what are your thoughts on the upcoming 40k Amazon TV show with Henry Cavill? If you could choose, what would you have the series be about, and who would Henry play? That is a cool question. I like that. So I'm skeptical because, in my opinion, the quality of a lot of content on the streaming services like Amazon and Netflix has been very disappointing lately. So I'm skeptical. I don't hold high hopes for this, to be honest. But there's so much potential. And I think one of the things about just life in general is that one of the most frustrating things when you have subverted expectations, right? When you're expecting something to go a certain way and then it goes worse than you expected, it's so devastating. So with something like this, there's such high potential. But if you set yourself, you're like, oh, if I could pick, it would be this, that, and blah, blah, and it'd be all about this. And you get this image in your head of what a perfect Amazon series would look like. There's almost zero chance that they're going to do it the way you would want it done, or I would want it done, or anyone would want it done. And then you're going to be absolutely gutted when it comes out, and it's not what you were expecting, right? So I will make some idea. I'll share some ideas, but I don't necessarily think that having an expectation about this is wise. I think the most compelling and interesting 40k stories are the Horus Heresy ones. If they were to do a Horus Heresy, like the whole Horus Heresy like book series, if they were to just put that into a TV series, where it's like each book might be a season, and they might go, cool, season 1 is this, season 2 is that, all the way up, and they plan it all the way up into the Siege of Terra, and they were to make that whole thing a series, that would be fucking awesome. That would be so goddamn awesome. I know there's a lot of people talking about having like an Inquisitor style thing where he's like going around human inhabited planets and stuff, and you have a human, because one of the challenges with having it Space Marine centric is it's hard to relate to those characters because they're superhumans and whatnot. And so telling the story through the lens of a human Inquisitor could be interesting. I find that somewhat less interesting. I respect the idea, and I respect people that propose that, but I find that less interesting. I would really like to see some big blockbuster, make Marvel look like kids play, like go, cool, we're going all out. Let's just dump fucking billions of dollars into it. I was reading an article the other day that was talking about how Games Workshop, like three or 4 years ago, they recorded like multiple years in a row with like $300 to $500 million in revenue at 40% profit margin. Like, that's so much fucking money. That's actually just like a completely unnecessary amount of money. If they funnel that kind of money into making sure that they are the next Marvel, they're the next MCU. The MCU's shit the bed lately. The DC universe never really took off. There's actually a vacuum here that could be filled. If 40k come along and they release these things where it's like they drip feed it out and it's all the Horus Heresy stuff, so it explains everything along the way, that would break the fucking, break the internet, so to speak. So yeah, I'd love to see that. And if Henry Cavill's going to be one of the characters that's going to be persistent, one of the problems with the Horus Heresy is there's no real character that's in everything. So if you were to make him like the main character, that might not work. But he doesn't necessarily have to be the main character. He could be, because he's producing it, of course, but he could actually play the Emperor. He could play the Emperor, which would be hilarious. And then he's only in a set number of scenes, but then he can make sure that it's all true to, the sort of narrative. Yeah, that's what I think. That's a really good question, though. I like that. What else we got? Alias. Hey man, congrats on the 10k subscribers. Your video is really cool. For a new player like me, World Eaters are my second army, but Melee is hard for me to understand and play, so your content is great for that. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you find it useful. I know combat is one of the hardest parts of the game, but that in itself is one of the reasons it's the most rewarding. So I think you've chose a great faction to play, and I think it's one of those things where, yes, it's hard, but stick with it. When you master it, it's really satisfying. So, yeah, that's cool. I love the Heresy color scheme, but it's too difficult to do. I'll stick with red and gold, but I'm going to paint my Angron with white skin and blood red in the recesses. That's cool. What else we got here? If World Eaters were suddenly defeated from the game, or deleted from the game and from memory, what army would you be playing instead? So you've said World Eaters. I'd be playing Chaos Space Marines. My first Chaos Space Marine army was actually Iron Warriors. Let's get started on this second. What are they called? Venom Crawler. My first Chaos Space Marine army was actually Iron Warriors. I really liked the way they had like the robotic arms and stuff, and also I really liked the Siegecraft. So they used to be able to take a Basilisk in their army, which was really cool to me. And then and they also used to be able to take a Vindicator, which didn't used to be available to Chaos Space Marines. It was only available to Iron Warriors. So the first full army that I ever owned that was a 1500 point army, because that used to be the standard, was Iron Warriors. It had 2 Defilers, it had a Vindicator, a Basilisk, it had maxed out Obliterators, and this is the old metal Obliterator sculpt, where each Obliterator was like $35, and I remember once it being in a hobby store buying one, because Mum was like, oh, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, I want Obliterator. And she's like, you want an Obliterator? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, what's an Obliterator? And I'm like, it's one of these guys. And I showed her, and she was like, well, you can have more than one of those, like, it's your birthday. I was like, Mum, they're like $35. And she was like, oh. I guess you can have one Obliterator, because like I said at the start, I grew up single mum, relatively poor, so 40k was a real luxury for us. And getting a single Obliterator for your birthday, and I was happy with that. Like, I was like, yes, an Obliterator. Unfortunately, that army was stolen, which really sucked, because it took so long, and so many birthdays and Christmases went into that army, and it was stolen. And when that happened, that actually got me out of 40k for a long time. Like, I was just like, I am done with this game. I'm, done with this community and whatnot. So I was like, I'm not doing 40k anymore. I told my brother, like, sorry, we're done. I'm pretty sure he stole it, by the way, and sold it, because when I questioned him years later, he gave some really suspicious sort of answers. But yeah, so I went out of the hobby for a while, and then when I got back into it, that's when I was like, now I'm just doing pure World Eaters. And I got Khan. Khan's one of my favorite characters in the lore, one of my favorite models, the old version of him with the chain axe up in the air. Sick dude. But yeah, so if World Eaters were to become no longer a thing, I think I'd probably go back to just Chaos Space Marines. If I still know everything that I know now, I would probably do Chaos Space Marines, but I would do Black Legion, and that way you can also do Thousand Sons, Death Guard, Emperor's Children, and World Eaters, but include them in, like, they're painted in Black Legion scheme, because Black Legion sort of uses all that sort of stuff, and that way you can really flesh out the collection. Like, you can just, that's a 50-year collection that you can just keep adding to, and it's all cohesive and it all makes sense. Whereas I actually feel for the first time ever with this collection, I feel myself sort of approaching the end, where I'm like, there's not much else to really add to this World Eaters army. Like, I've got all the demons, I've got all the Marines. I'm praying for a Dark Mechanicus release, because that'll give me something to sink my teeth into. But yeah, as it stands, I'm actually running out of options. which wouldn't have happened as fast if I had chosen to do Black Legion, because then I could have done Death Guard and just added it to my Black Legion collection. So, yeah, I guess to answer your question, if it was just World Eaters disappearing, I would do Black Legion, and if it was Chaos Space Marines as a whole disappearing, I'd probably do Orcs. We mentioned this earlier. Somebody asked if I had to pick a Xenos faction, what would it be? And I picked Orcs. I would probably end up doing Orcs, because I really don't like Loyalist Space Marines. They're a bunch of wankers. And I would apologise to any Space Marine players listening, but no, they're a bunch of wankers. So, not interested in them. Not interested in Guard, not interested in Eldar, yeah. It'd have to be the Orcs, would be where I would go. Cool. What other questions have we got here? Your opinions on shadow boxing versus push-ups versus jumping jacks during a game. What is your exercise of choice to keep up the adrenaline during a tournament? Well, jumping jacks are out. Who's doing jumping jacks, honestly? Shadow boxing is fantastic. It's a way of psychologically intimidating your opponent. Unless you're a flabby prick like me, where shadow boxing just makes you look like a twat. Push-ups. Recently at Radicalism, I did a push-up for every time that Angron was resurrected in a game, which was 2. And that's about as many push-ups as I can manage. So, push-ups probably not quite the flex, because, if you can only do 2, that's actually kind of a sad flex, it's embarrassing. So I'm going to go with shadow boxing as my preferred method of exercise during a tournament. Talking about exercise during a tournament actually brings me to a thing that I've been working on lately. Is I've been taking up intermittent fasting. And one of the things that I've noticed with that is that basically means during tournaments I don't eat lunch, right? And I have noticed that my mental clarity during a tournament is so much higher than it is otherwise. Whereas I used to, on the way to the tournament, I'd swing by, a cafe or whatever, and I'd get, a croissant and a hot chocolate or something for breakfast, and then I'd be sluggish through my first game, and then we'd go to lunch, and I'd have a big lunch, then I'd be sluggish, and I'd probably have a couple of drinks along the way as well. And then, I'd just be so sluggish throughout the day. Whereas now that I'm fasting, I am, on point. Everything is so much clearer. The mental focus is so much higher. And I think it's just when you haven't got food in you, your body goes into, essentially search mode. You're trying to find food, right? You need to be alert because you're hungry. You need food. So your body becomes alert and tries to find the food. And then if you can redirect that mental alertness to trying to find opportunities in a game to come up with really interesting tricks, that's so much better. So it's something that, in terms of, I know the question was phrased as a joke, but it's actually an interesting topic, is that having that mental focus by keeping yourself fit, trying to be more fit and being active during tournaments, I actually think it is a good thing. And I think that those people that go, cool, the round's finished, I'm going to go sit down somewhere and eat a bunch of food, is actually going to hamstring you a little bit more than you might otherwise think. You might think that it's harmless, but I actually think that it does impact your tournament results. What else we got here? I've sort of lost track of where we're up to in the comments, so just another reminder, if you want to make sure that your comment gets read, chuck a little $1 donation next to it, and then it'll highlight it, and I won't miss it, because I'm definitely going to miss a bunch of comments in here. So that's a great way that you can do it and cost you $1. Team events, we talked about that. Adam, having painted Helldrake myself, I can totally agree that their trim is so gross. Dalton's putting off repainting his Helldrake. I painted 3 of them, and I'm stupid, and I assembled them first. my advice is if you're going to paint a Helldrake, paint it before you assemble it. Like, keep the wings separate, paint them, and then assemble it. I just got impatient and I wanted the model to be built, because probably my least favorite part of 40k is building the models. So I built them, and now I'm sitting there going, oh my god, these are aids to paint. They're so hard. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you are going to be building painting a Helldrake, keep the wings separate. Assemble them like sub-assembly, and then put it all together at the end. Okay, what do we got here? Ultra No Fun. Good day. I just started playing Warhammer, and of course I picked up World Eaters in my faction, watched a lot of your videos, picked a 1,000-point army, and played a couple of games last week. It was awesome. When can we get them? Not sure what you're referring to on when you can get them. I'm glad you're enjoying the World Eaters, though. If you are referring to the dice, so these dice will be giveaway to whoever asks the most interesting question, and I will be posting them tomorrow morning. So, hoping to post them tomorrow morning, or maybe tomorrow afternoon. Either way, it'll be very soon. So basically, at the end of this video, I'm going to go back through and pick a question, and then if your question was picked, let me know your address and I'll post them straight out, because I've got some other dice that I need to post out anyway. So 2 birds with 1 stone. If you do want to get a set of these dice and you don't win it, there's a few ways that you can do it. One of them is, if you check the links in almost every video, I don't think there's any links in this one yet, because there's no description, because I'm bad and I set up the stream like an idiot. But there's a store called the Gaming Arena that are selling them on my behalf, so you can pick up sets there. If you want, just go to thegamingarena.com.au. I think that's the name of their website, and there's a section there for merchandise that has the whole web page dedicated to my stuff, and you can pick up a set of dice there, or you can enter the Blog for the Blood God Fundraiser raffle, and pick up a set there. And that is actually a good prompt, because I believe... G'day guys, I just wanted to take a second to talk to you about the exciting Blog for the Blood God Fundraiser raffle, where you can buy tickets for your chance to win a set of neoprene objective markers and a pack of 50 Blog for the Blood God dice. If you'd like to buy some tickets, click on the link in the description of this video. You can scroll down and view the prizes there, and if you'd like to buy some tickets, select Buy Tickets, select how many tickets you would like to buy, select that you are over 18 and that you agree with the terms, and then I would recommend deselecting the subscription, because who needs unnecessary emails, and then you can proceed to fill out your details. If you are an Australian resident, you will be required to select your state. If not, just select any state. It doesn't particularly matter, as long as the street address and details of postage are correct as per above. And then you can go through, proceed on payment, and then it will submit your ticket sales. The reason we've decided to do a raffle in order to raise funds is because this year I have been named as captain for Team Australia for the WTC World Team Championships of Warhammer 40k. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, really exciting opportunity for me. However, as an Australian, that trip is extremely expensive, and unfortunately, life does what it does and has thrown a bunch of unforeseen expenses my way in the terms of veterinary bills for my very sick cat. So any help that we can get to send me to Europe to represent Australia would be greatly appreciated. And also, if there's any money left over at the end, it will go towards improving the quality and frequency of the content here on YouTube. So I very much appreciate any support that you are prepared to give, and I look forward to rewarding that with some exciting prizes. If this does well, we'll do multiple of these raffles, because I've got plenty of stuff to give away, and I really do want to show some support for the community that supports me so well. So thank you very much for your consideration. If you'd like to buy a ticket, links are in the description below, and let's get into today's video. Hey guys, that probably wasn't the smoothest transition into an ad. I'm trying to scroll on the laptop mousepad thingy, and I accidentally clicked on a whole bunch of videos, and then I was like, oh god, what the fuck's happening? So apologies for that, but yeah, that raffle is a great way of getting your hands on some of those dice as well. There's also the objective markers in there, so you can pick up both. And it also goes a long way towards supporting this channel. Now, the raffle, like I said in that little video, it is set up on an Australian website. So it will ask you when buying your tickets what state you're from. I don't think that really matters though. Like, you can just chuck in whatever, and when I draw your ticket, it'll have your email address or your phone number or whatever, contact details you put in. And when I draw your name from the raffle, I'll get in touch and figure out how to post it to you. So don't stress about that. Just, buy your tickets, make sure your contact details are accurate, and then we are all good. So yeah, check out that raffle. It's a great way to show your support for the channel. And I think I said I've got 5 sets to give away as part of that raffle. And currently there's only a handful of people who bought tickets. So now is actually a fantastic time to get involved, because your probability of winning is actually really high. So, yeah, I highly recommend checking that out. What else have we got in here in terms of questions? Would love a Bile plus Possess focused detachment. All my games have recently been Beastmen in the old world, and they're about combos. If CSM are more of that, then I'd be stoked. Yeah, I would love to see a Creations of Bile one where, there's a bunch of stratagems on how to enhance the units. There's enhancements that instead of just enhancing the character, enhance the whole unit that it's attached to. That'd be really cool. Like, there's this current system where, like, every enhancement's like, 10 to 20 points sort of thing, or some of them are a bit more expensive. Most of them are around 10 to 20 points, and they more or less just enhance the character. I feel like the Creations of Bile as a faction has a real opportunity to sort of deviate from that norm and go, cool, this enhancement that you put on this character is a 100-point enhancement, but it gives plus 2 inches of movement and advance and charge to his squad, or something like that, where you can just go, cool, this guy has modified his models to be, XY, like the boys in his squad to be, XYZ ability. That would be really cool. And that would be a lot of fun, and it would make them feel distinct and characterful and different. So I'd love to see that for Creations of Bile. I don't think we're going to. I think it'll probably just be more of the same. I remember somebody was telling me that when GW set out to do 10th edition, one of the things that they did is they actually wrote all of the rules that everybody would have access to at the start of the edition, and they basically told the Codex writers that they couldn't deviate from those. So there's this massive document full of rules, and when they're writing a codex, they just pick and choose and combine rules to make detachments. There's no inventing new rules. And I think that's off the back of, some of the new rules that got invented in the tail of previous editions were pretty bonkers, right? And I think GW have just gone, cool, if we just write all of these, test them all, they all work, and they're all relatively balanced, now we can just say to people, no new rules, and the game shouldn't break too much, and then they should be able to manage it all from there with points updates, which is wise. But the problem is over time that becomes quite dull quite fast. Depends on how deep the pool of rules that they have available to them is. If it's a shallow pool where there's only like a handful of rules to select from, then it could become real dull real fast. And I'm concerned that that is the case, because like if you look at the if you look at the some of the recent Codex releases, there's like Grey Knights style or Chaos Demons style faction Necrons. So the Necrons, where there's like, cool, this part of the board's your Shadow of Chaos. If you control the middle, it becomes your Shadow of Chaos. Like, that was an interesting Chaos rule that worked for demons. And now they're just like, oh, it's also Necrons have the same thing. And it's like, if they do that, by the time we get to the last Codex, it's going to be so boring, because everyone's going to be like, oh, these guys are just like, they're just like Necron version of CSM. It's not original, it's not inspiring, it's not creative. And ultimately, I think 40k attracts people that are interested in interesting creative expression. right? That's why I'm sitting here painting fucking a thing, right? I could be doing something else. I could be playing a video game where everything's already done. I could be playing a card game that has tactics and strategy, but no real creative hobby element. Like, people in 40k are creative people. We need to GW need to facilitate that creativity, not limit it by having every fucking detachment the same. So if I could get on the phone to GW today, that's one of the pieces of advice that I would give them, is every decision that they should be making, or that they make, they should be making through the lens of, how does this encourage and reward creativity? And I feel like they're not doing that very well right now, especially if, we start seeing codexes where they're all just carbon copies of previous released codexes. That's going to be a real sad day for 40k when that becomes the norm. But it's also, I understand the motivation, right? Because it's great for balance. It helps prevent, the game from getting out of control. So I understand it. I do. But I just feel like I'd rather play a game that's poorly balanced, but people have creative expression and an opportunity to sort of do something interesting, than something that's perfectly balanced but is boring. If you want to play something perfectly balanced, go play chess. If you want to play something that's wild and out of control and spicy and interesting and rewarding of creativity and rewarding of that sort of stuff, well, then that's when you play 40k. We shouldn't be trying to make 40k like chess. That's not the right angle to take. So if I was GW, I would not be doing that. Alright, let's have a look. Some questions. We've got Dawn of War 1 or 2. Dawn of War 1. Dawn of War 2 was rubbish. Dawn of War 1 with the... part of what made Dawn of War 1 so cool was the cinematics. That was like some of the first time that you'd seen 40k in a cinematic frame. And holy crap, that's so cool. The first one where you got like those orcs running over the hill, you got the Space Marines shooting at them, and then the Dreadnought's assault cannons just like... and just deletes a whole bunch of orcs. You're just like, wow, Dreadnoughts are sick, Whereas previously you look at a Dreadnought and you're like, that looks dumb. But seeing it animated was so cool. Dawn of War 1 is sick. I was actually, because I had today off, being a Sunday, and I actually didn't have anything planned for the first time in so long, that I was like, I'm just going to kick back and play some Dawn of War. It's been a long time since I played that game, and that game was a ton of fun. But that's when I checked my phone and saw that we'd hit the 10,000, and I was like, well, maybe instead of playing some Dawn of War, I'll turn on the live stream, have some drinks, paint some fucking trim, and have a chat to you fine lads. And I don't regret my decision at all. I don't even know how long this stream's been going for, but I'm not bored. I hope you're not bored. What else we got here? I used to use Orc Bikers like a wall to restrict how many models can pile into my Warboss and Knobs to maximize my attacks, but restrict large units getting into me. Yeah, Orcs are a ton of fun like that. We've got MR Trip. Hey, just got back from a Teams Queensland GT, had a blast. Yeah, the Gladiator Games guys, they do some really interesting events. I had a lot of fun the last few times that I went up. So it's good to hear that you guys are still plugging away with your meta up there, because I know that for those who don't know, in Australia we've got Queensland up the top, we've got New South Wales, then we've got Victoria, and then we've got South Australia and Western Australia, and all of these cities are quite far apart. So we all have our own independent sort of metas, our independent communities. So I don't get to go to Queensland very often for tournaments, unfortunately. But every time I have, it's been an absolute blast. I've got lots of good mates up in Queensland, mates that I've met through 40k. And it'd be good to see you guys again soon, hopefully, when everything's said and done. We've got Dalton saying premium ad content, thank you. Only Homer, what do you think is a great way to get motivation back to paint? For me personally, this is how I get motivated to paint. Doing these live streams. There's no way I would probably never paint these fucking venom crawlers if it wasn't for this stream. So there's two main ways that I get the motivation. One of them is this. The other one is tournaments. If I know that there's a tournament coming up and there's a certain unit that I want to play in that tournament, that will motivate me to paint it. That's probably the main one. And then this live stream motivation is like secondary. So like, for example, I'm painting these guys. I don't know if I will ever use them in a game, because I've got, this is going to be 3 venom crawlers, which so far as I'm concerned, there has never been a time in 40k where you require 3 venom crawlers. You know, there was some interesting stuff you could do because they basically gave you +1 to your psychic tests, so you could make it so that, you know, you're getting psychic tests with +3 to the casts, which was cool. Basically meant that you're just not failing any powers. But now you're paying 100 points each, you're paying 300 points to get that. It's just not worth it. So unless they get some swanky new rules in the new book, I don't see ever really needing 3 of these guys. But it's better to have 3 and not need them than to need 3 and not have them. So I'm just sort of plugging away at them, getting them painted. I'm also painting them very poorly. I'm not sure whether you can see on the camera or not, but like, this is some of the worst painting I've done in a long time. But that's primarily based on the fact that I know that the probability of me using these guys in a tournament is so low that, like, I just can't justify spending 10 hours sitting here painting trim. I'd rather just spend an hour or 2 and chatting to you guys, so I'm barely watching what I'm doing, and just get it done. And then if there was a book that come out and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, venom crawlers are so meta right now, perhaps I'd go in and touch them up and repaint parts of them. But as it stands, I'm more than happy with just throwing paint on them so that I can put them away and say that they're done, and then we're good to go. But yeah, that's to answer your question about motivation. You know, motivation itself is essentially, you need a goal. People always say, I've got this goal, how do I get motivated to achieve it? I think that's the wrong question. I think the real question is your goal something that is worth achieving? If the goal is something that's worth achieving, the motivation will follow. You know, like sometimes I'll be like, I can't get motivated to get out of bed in the morning. And it's like, yeah, that's because there's fucking nothing out there for me. Like, I've got nothing to do today. So how am I supposed to get motivated? The problem isn't the lack of motivation. The problem is the lack of goal. Yeah. So if you're like, oh, cool, I've got a tournament coming up and I want to get these models painted so that I can attend the tournament. If that's your motivation, that will get you to paint the models. You know? That's the key. So I think the key to the motivation is having a solid goal, a solid reason for wanting to do the thing. And another important part of that is lowering your standards. It's way easier than increasing your quality. So, like, for example, for these guys, I'm like, you know what, I don't care what they look like. As long as they're done, you know, as long as they look passable. So when you lower your standards, then all of a sudden it's really easy to paint them. And when something's easy to do, it's much easier to get motivated to do it because, you know, you're seeing the progress, you're getting it done, it's easy, you're making progress towards your goal. That motivates you further to make even further progress, and you get sort of this positive feedback loop where you're just like, oh my god, I'm nearly done, and then all of a sudden you're gunning for it, and you get it done even faster. And that's unlocked by just lowering your standards, not to a ridiculous level, just to a reasonable level, where it's like, cool, I've lowered them a little bit so that enough to actually get me to do the thing. You know, what's the smallest thing that you could do to actually start? Because that's the hard part. Once you've started, well, then you're off to the races, right? And you're much more able to achieve your goals. And that applies to everything in life. It's just, you know, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good is a good saying. And don't, you know, don't stop yourself from starting because you don't know how you're going to finish. Just sort of do it, and you'll figure it out. Have faith in yourself, and you'll be fine. So just if you want motivation to paint your models, just ask yourself, well, why do I want to paint the models? Why? And if you go, oh, it's because I want to attend a tournament and I'm very close to getting a 2,000 point army finish. Well, it's like, well, if you want to attend the tournament, pick a tournament that you want to attend. Like, that's the tournament I want to attend. Then look at it like, well, how many nights am I going to have free between then and then? And how many models do I have to get painted per night in order to get it finished in time? And that's your motivation. Yeah. That was a good question, actually. I really enjoyed that. Cool. Brendan has asked, saw last time you were painting a Helldrake. As rule of cool, I love the look, but every time I play it, I feel like it doesn't do that great. Any tips or ideas to play it better? Helldrakes are, in my opinion, probably the worst unit in the game right now. They are fucking trash. They are so bad. So even the World Eaters one, which has a very niche use because they have anti-infantry 2+ and devastating wound, anti-fly 2+ with devastating wounds. So they actually do quite a bit of work in that niche scenario. But even then, like, they're charging something, they're doing a bunch of wounds to it, and then they're probably just going to die in return because they're not tough. They're also OC 0, so even if they live, it's like, cool. Like, it can't secure objectives, it can't do anything for you. And they don't do significant damage. Like, they're just, of all of the things that you want a unit to be able to do, they don't really do any of them. And they're super expensive. If they went down to like 110 points, or 100 points, then you'd be like, okay, that's cool. It's kind of like a Rhino, right, in durability, but it's really fast. It doesn't transport anything, but it's really fast. It does okay damage to small things, and it's OC 0. Like, I'd still probably almost just rather a Rhino. An empty Rhino would be better, because at least it has OC. At least it can jump onto an objective and actually do something. Like a Helldrake's OC 0, so if it jumps onto an objective and your opponent blows it up, you can't even use the Corn Strat to sticky the objective, because you have to control the objective. And Helldrake doesn't control anything. So I think they are close to being the worst unit in the game. They're definitely the worst unit for the World Eaters and the CSM. There might be other units for other factions that I'm not aware of that are just equally trash, but the Helldrake is fucking trash. I think in order to fix it, it needs, first of all, it needs an OC value. I don't care if it's a flyer. It needs to be OC, at least OC 1. Even just OC 1 I would accept, right? So GW need to make it OC 1. They need to halve its points cost, just make it dirt cheap, and then it's fine. Or they need to upgrade that flamer so that flamer's actually scary, Or they need to update the combat so it's like, wow, this thing hits like a demon prince, Like, it needs to do something interesting. Whereas at the moment it's like, it's not tough, it doesn't hit hard, it can't control objectives, it doesn't really synergize with anything either. Like, it doesn't add any buffs to anything, or, it's just, yeah, I don't know, it's just lackluster to me. The fact that it's got anti-fly is cool, but it's like, that only matters if fly is prevalent in the meta, which it's not. Most people are not running units that fly. So, yeah. Unfortunately, if you've just spent hours painting a Helldrake, I think you've wasted your time. At least at this point. I think there's potential for it to get some serious buffs in a balanced data slate, and then all of a sudden it becomes really good. But I think it's gonna have to be like some of the biggest buffs a single unit has like ever seen before it's something that I would consider taking to a tournament game. So unfortunately, yeah, Helldrakes are kind of in the bin at the moment. They're also kind of a weird model in that they suffer from a similar symptoms as the Defiler, where it's like a weird shaped model. Like, I know the Helldrakes have that round base, but they've also got the big wings that hang down making it just really hard to maneuver and position. And that sort of makes the unit bad in of itself. Like, I was looking at Defilers, and I actually think World Eaters Defilers are kind of interesting, right? Because they shoot okay, they combat really well, and the fact that World Eaters can advance and charge them and auto 60 advance, so that it's a fucking fast combat threat, or they can sit back on an objective and shoot with it with Angron, giving it reroll hits. Like, that's interesting. They can also, if they die, they can sticky an objective. It brings shooting to a World Eaters list that traditionally lacks shooting. You know, there's lots of things about the Defiler that's actually quite interesting and make the Defiler a good pick. But the fact that they're such weird-shaped models just really puts me off playing them. Like, if you put them on a base, the base is huge. And makes it, especially on WTC maps, it makes it really hard to pilot them. And if you don't put them on a base, well, then they've got like all these weird legs coming out, and it's like, well, hang on, are you in base contact? What distances? How are you measuring things? How are you moving if you're trying to get around a corner? Like, it just becomes this absolute headache of a unit to sort of control and to maneuver, to the point where it's like, even if it was really good, you'd be like, I don't want to run the fucking Defilers. So I don't really know how they fix that. I know they tried to fix it by saying it ignores terrain that's 4 inches or less, which helps on some WTC maps, but not all of them and not every piece. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird. So that's my sort of thoughts on the Helldrake and the Defiler as well. What other questions we got here? We've got Christopher Broadway. Hey, can't stay. Just wanted to show my support. Love your channel. Love your work. Thank you. Dalton, yes, using States of Origin, a traditionally international football format to explain Australian 40k tradition to international viewers. Like I said, I don't know sports. What's sports ball? I literally don't watch any sport. I don't watch MMA. I don't watch football. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch any sport whatsoever. I don't even watch 40k battle reports and live streams from event coverage. I don't watch any of that shit. You know, if I'm watching YouTube or if I'm watching TV, it's either going to be some kind of comedy. I really enjoy watching my comedies, or it's going to be some like philosophical or psychological, you know, content that's like educational, right? Or something like that, or some political fucking bullshit, right? Like, it'll be something like that where it's like, this is an interesting topic, I would like to learn more. You know, it's never, I want to watch the man kick the ball, which I know, not to degrade sports. Obviously, sports is massively popular. Everybody freaking loves sports. I know I'm the weird one here. It's not for me. I just don't really get it. Like, I was at a tournament recently where we were staying at a mate's house. One of the other players. We went back to his place and the footy was on, and everyone's watching the footy, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I mean, I kind of get it. I kind of get why people like this, but like, they're acting like, oh, we won, and I'm like, no, you didn't win. Those guys fucking won. You're sitting on the couch. You didn't fuck all, mate. Like, what do you mean you won? I just don't get it. It's just, to me, it's just so weird the way people engage with sport. I just don't get it. So if anybody has any fucking ways of explaining sport to a non-sports guy, that would be great help. Is that giveaway international? Absolutely. I'll post these anyway. I know international post on these is pretty expensive, but you know, I want to show my support to those who support this channel. So yes, the giveaways are international. My question is like that one, but who would you want to play in the TV series? Or who would I want to play in the TV series? My favorite character of all time in Warhammer 40k is Khan the Betrayer. So I would like to play Khan. And the reason that I like Khan is because he's presented in modern 40k as this one-dimensional, like, bloodlusting maniac, right? But he actually has, like, a very tragic story, you know, where he's an honorable, noble sort of leader within a legion of you know, of very violent, aggressive people, right? but he's a keen strategist. He's a tactical guy. And then there's the whole thing with Argyle losing his best friend to some bullshit. And then, when he finds his Primarch, most Space Marines, when they find their Primarch, they're overwhelmed with pride and joy and whatever. Whereas he finds his and he's like, wow, my dad's fucking munted. Like, my dad's an absolute mess. And not to go too much into my personal life, but I empathize with that scenario. So, having that and then having to try to get his, Primarch to work with his Legion, and it's all falling apart, and then in order to try to appease his dad, he goes and gets this surgery done, and then all of a sudden this surgery, the butcher's nails are driving him crazy, and everything's falling apart around him. I just find it's a really fascinating, interesting story with the way Khan Betrayer is portrayed. So, yeah, I would love to see him on the big screen, and if you told me tomorrow, Dean, you have to play a character in the Warhammer 40k series, it'd definitely be Khan. Definitely. I'm very close to finishing the second Venom Crawler. Let's have some more questions. I've got a message from Mark saying, "You free Wednesday, Arvo?" Yes. Yeah, I can do Wednesday. We'll do something. I've got a hobby on Tuesday where I've got a bunch of Team Australia and Team Victoria players coming over. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff there, which is going to be really exciting. And then, Wednesday will be a good opportunity for just hangs and hobs. So, Wednesday's good. I think a Hive City crime drama would be the most mass appeal. Maybe like a Gene Suit or a Chaos Cultist in a true detective style show. Kind of like those 40k crime novels. See, I wouldn't enjoy that, I don't think. If I want to watch a crime drama, I'm just going to watch an actual crime drama. If I want to watch something 40k, I want it to be like fucking Thunderhawk gunships blasting cunts and titans, and I want to see 40k. I want to see Space Marines curb stomping motherfuckers. Like, I want to see 40k. But I know that's a very popular opinion. People really like that, so yeah, that's cool. If I had to play another Space Marine or Chaos Space Marine Legion instead of World Eaters, which would it be? I think I've covered this a couple times. It'd probably be Black Legion. If I had to play a Space Marine Legion, like a Loyalist Legion, probably Black Templars. Which Traitor Primarch do you think will return next? Traitor Primarch. I think it's pretty obviously Fulgrim. Not Fulgrim. Fulgrim? The Emperor's Children one. Fuck. What's his name? Yeah. Either way, that cunt. The Emperor's Children guy. I think we're going to get an Emperor's Children Codex. He'll come out in that. It's interesting, though, that he did just receive a Horus Heresy model that is the Demon Primarch version of him. That's interesting, because previously all of the Horus Heresy models have been the non-demon version, and then in 40k we get the demon version, so that's interesting. I would also like to see Perturabo. He's cool. There's a lot of potential for him to be really, really awesome. But I think they'll stick with the big four, so to speak. And they'll release Peter Turbo. He'll be the next Primarch. Okay, we've got Tim Grimstead. If folks can follow June, Red Moon, Rebel Moon, and Fallout series, I think 40k will do fine. That's a good point. Like these June and the Fallout series, for example, like Fallout is way more niche than 40k. Surely, like there's a couple video games that's really cool, but like 40k goes way back, like way back, and it's also, I feel like it's more broad. So I agree. I think 40k as a series can do really well. My concern more is that that like Amazon or whatever is gonna fuck it up. That's my concern. How have you fared with 10-man unit of Terminators, and what is your usual game plan when bringing them? So I haven't played with 10-man Terminators much yet. It's actually a little bit of secret tech that I'm working on, developing in the background. I don't want people to wise onto it, but because you guys are such legends, and this is a good question, I'll answer it here. 10 World Eaters Terminators coming in from rapid ingress and then advancing and charging on auto 6 advance is brutal. And I know you can do the same thing with Exalted 8-bound, and the Exalted 8-bound are cheaper and arguably better. The reason I like the Terminators though is because there's fucking 10 of them, right? As opposed to 6 Exalted 8-bound. It's a little bit more expensive, but then every strat that you're using, instead of using it on 6 guys, you're using it on 10. You're getting almost twice the efficiency. So rapid ingressing the 10, sending them in. The good thing about the 10 also is if your opponent has fights first, like let's say they fight first and they kill 6 bodies, right? Well, that would wipe out the Exalted 8-bound unit. But that brings you down to having only 4 Terminators left. And then, because you've taken casualties, those Terminators are going to get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. When they retaliate, they're going to destroy the thing that just fought into them. So the Terminator unit, I think it can take a punch way harder than the Exalted 8-bound, and as a result, it's really, really interesting. It also obviously brings shooting as well, which is something the Exalted 8-bound don't bring. So if somebody puts some Nurglings out and goes, I'm going to screen you with Nurglings, you're like, yeah, sick. The Terminators drop over here, they shoot the Nurglings, and then they charge something, and then next turn you're bringing in the rest of your stuff, and you don't have to worry about Nurglings anymore. I think the Terminator tech is actually really interesting, so that's something I'm working on in the background, but I'm yet to come up with anything that I'm confident to sort of run. I think there's still a fair bit of testing to work out what the rest of the list has to look like to make those Terminators good, and if it is even going to work at all. Like, I don't want to sort of tell you guys, oh, this new hot shit Terminator tech, and then turns out it's actually bad, and then we've just wasted everybody's time. So, still a bit of work to go there. But yeah, Terminators are interesting. That, my friends, is 2 fully trimmed, those cunts, what are they called? Venom Crawlers. So we're going to have a quick ad break now, and then we're going to jump into guys, good little break there. So we've finished the Venom Crawlers, so I'm going to put this paint away, and we're going to go through and read some more questions that you guys have submitted. So, what do we got here? My little cute, sweet, pooky, wookie, wobbly bear has said hey twice. I don't know what the fuck that's all about. That's funny. So that's cool. If GW told you to create one of the detachments for the World Eaters Codex, what would it look like and how would it play? That's a good question. It would depend on the model range. If I get full free range, I'd be like, cool. I want there to be the Dreadclaw and the Cryptus as new units in the World Eaters Codex. And then I want a detachment where there's maybe reroll charges and +1 to charge on a turn in which they arrive from reserves, or something to that degree. And then like the Charybdis and the Dreadclaw would have a rule where it's like, on the turn in which a unit disembarks from these, they get reroll wounds or something. So you've got this like savage alpha strike, deep strike. That would be the theme of the detachment. And then as for enhancements, you'd probably have like 3 enhancements. One of them would be like a first to the fray, where it's like this unit is eligible to arrive 1 turn earlier. Something like that. Something, based all around that sort of stuff. That would be a cool detachment, and that would be one that I'd like to play. So that would be, that's my answer to that question. But there's so many ways that there's so many different angles they could take the World Eaters in. I'd also like to see one where it's like, it impacts the blessings roll. So maybe, you've got your 8 dice, you roll them, but for this one, you can pick, this detachment rule is that you can pick 1 additional blessing. So instead of picking 2, you can pick 3, right? And that way the detachment rule is kind of just like sustained hits, or it's kind of just like lethal hits, or it's kind of just like 6 and Film of Pain. But it just adds to your flexibility in the way that you can choose various things. So that would be one. And that one would probably also have like the Favourite of Khorne relic to re-roll your blessings. That one would probably have an enhancement that allows you to modify a blessing, one of the dice rolls on your blessings. So something that's built all around the blessings rolls. Maybe for every time there's a stratagem for, killing a unit, you make an additional blessings roll. That would be in that detachment. That sort of stuff. So one that's all around the blessings, one that's all around the deep striking and that sort of stuff, and then one that's around maybe like demon engines or something like that. So that's the direction I would take the World Eaters. Good question. If every country in the world was a faction in Warhammer, who would be who? Okay. Major Kill did a really awesome video on this, so I'm not going to try to even come. I think it was not Major Kill. It was Friendly Geordies of all people. So he did a really awesome video on this. So check that out. I'm not going to even attempt to try to repeat it. It was brilliant. Check that out. In fact, as soon as I finish this stream, I'm going to go watch it again myself because it was so funny. I think it was Friendly Geordies. Yeah. When the rule pool is limited, everybody goes for the most effective combo, sustained and lethal 5+. What do you think World Eaters synergize with for a team tourneys, or is it just an absolute meme? I think that the World Eaters are fine in teams, because one of the problems with the World Eaters in singles is there is a couple of matchups that are really, really hard for them, like Custodes, for example. But if you play it in a teams environment, then you can absolutely dodge those factions that you're worried about. So I don't think it's a meme at all. I think World Eaters are fantastic in teams. Only Homer, don't forget Tassie. It's not forgetting, it's purposefully leaving it out. Nah, Tassie's there's actually some really sick guys from Tassie. I met a few. There was one of them that applied for Team Australia, and apologies, I'm blanking on his name right now. Fuck. What was his name? God damn it, I apologise for that. There was one bloke from Tassie that applied for Team Australia, and we had a dinner where we brought all the applicants together, and I met him, and I was like, this guy's awesome, and I had a great time with him. So what do we got here? We got my battle ready process is to apply my normal process and just stop when it's battle ready. This way I can pick it up later. That's good. What else we got? Mike G's Gaming Pub. Nice. I've been trying out the 10-man Terminators myself. Really difficult as I always practice against Dark Angels in 2K. My cousin, who's a top player in the local area, has always practiced against, says the strength of 10 Power Fists and the large volume attacks is a scary thing to fight against. Do I agree? Absolutely. So the World Eaters Terminators, when you look at them, it's really easy to think of them as worse than other Terminators, because like you can't attach a character to them. Their ability is like it only activates after they've started taking damage, which is generally suboptimal because you want to be able to hit your opponent with your ability. You don't want to have to wait for them to hit you and then your ability activates, especially because there's a lot of things in the game right now that can just delete 10 Terminators from full strength to dead. So your ability never really takes effect, whereas like, for example, the Chaos Space Marine Terminators, they have reroll hits. That ability would be way better, just having that, as opposed to getting +1 to hit. Well, reroll hits is better than +1 to hit, and they get it from the start. You know, and then the +1 to wound you only get when you've only got 4 Terminators left, and at that point it's only 4 Terminators. It's not that scary, so it's really easy to look at them and just dismiss them out of hand. But the fact that they're going to have a 6-up feeling of pain most of the time means that they're significantly more durable, because that means that when you're getting hit with 3 damage shots, every second shot statistically you're going to roll at least 1 6 in and not die. So every second shot essentially is going to fail to kill a Terminator, which, you know, it doesn't exactly work like that, but more or less it makes them significantly more durable. So that's really interesting. They also have the ability to get +2 to their move, so instead of moving 5, they're moving 7, and they have the ability to advance and charge, and they have the ability to make that an auto 6 advance. So normal Terminators are moving 5 inches and then charging. These cunts are moving 13 and then charging. Like, that's wild. So that in itself makes them significantly more interesting. And then the fact that you can put lethals on, sustained hits on, they've got more attacks than a standard Terminator and more strength. Not only do they get the +1 strength from being a World Eater, but their strength characteristic is already higher. So they're going in with a lot more strength, and they have a lot of cool stratagems that can be used on them. I really like the World Eaters Terminators. I think they're really cool. They are very expensive, arguably too expensive, but man, I don't think there's anything wrong with running a unit of 10 Terminators. And then our last comment on here is congrats on the 10k. Do you have a favorite unit, combo, or anti-Vindicator tank? Unit or combo for anti-Vindicator tank. If it's a loyalist Vindicator, it depends, because so many factions have access to Vindicators and they actually do differ quite significantly, because loyalists have access to Armor of Contempt. And Armor of Contempt is such a pain for World Eaters, because Khorne Berserkers being only AP1 means that the Vindicator is going to be getting 2-up saves. Khorne Berserkers just can't kill a Vindicator. They just can't do it. And even things like Exalted 8-bound and 8-bound, they're, you know, if they Armor of Contempt, it can be quite tough. So generally speaking, they're the things that I reserve Angron for. And I send my Exalted 8-bound and my 8-bound out to deal with all the other shit. And then Angron goes in and hits those hard targets. But your opponent can, knowing that you're going to try to do that, they can do interesting stuff like screen you out and whatnot. So, yeah, I'd say use Angron. What do we got here? Chaos Roomba, yay! So we got, well, what loadout would I go with? The Terminators is one question. There was some talk about Jeremy switching from CSM to T-Suns for teens. Any update on that? So we're exploring the 1,000 Suns. They're really interesting. We've got the Australian Team Championships coming up, which will probably be running the 1,000 Suns in that just to explore it. But in terms of WTC, who knows? That's so far out. Trying to predict what factions people will be on for that is wild, especially when we've got a balanced data slate to come out and a bunch of codexes. So who knows on that front? But we're definitely playing around with the 1,000 Suns because the Chaos Space Marines are sort of in a rough spot right now. Depends on what the Chaos Space Marine Codex is going to look like, and depends on what the balanced data slate is going to look like. As for my loadout with the Terminators, I think it writes itself. You want 2 guys that are going to have Reaper autocannons and Chain Fists. So that's 2 of your 10 models. Then you're going to have 6 guys that are going to have Power Fists. And on the World Eaters, I think I like the Combi Bolters, not the Combi Weapons. So the Combi Weapons have half as many shots, but they get anti-infantry 4+ with Dev Wounds. The fact that we don't really have any access to reroll wounds means that Dev Wounds only really matters when targeting infantry. And because we have the high strength and high damage of the all the Power Fists and stuff, I don't really think we need the anti-infantry. I think what's probably better is having the bolters, so that when you're shooting long range at something, you can actually whittle it down. If it's, units that are trying to run away from you, you need the range and the volume of shots. But I think the gun is either's fine. If you want the combi weapons or if you want the combi bolters, it's fine. It doesn't So you're going to have 2 guys with the Reaper autocannons chain fists. You're going to have 6 guys with power fists and some variant of bolter. And then I think you want the 2 guys with the double Accursed weapon, the twin Accursed weapon. Because you're a world leader, you want to get stuck into combat. So, and you want those reroll wounds and additional attacks. That's just really spicy. So that's the combo I'd do. And then depending on what targets you have is where you choose where your casualties come from. So if you know that this unit's got to go out and deal with a bunch of tanks, where the first couple casualties you remove would be your twin Accursed weapon guys. Whereas if they're dealing with a lot of infantry, well, that's when you go, okay, well, maybe a bunch of things that are neg 1 damage. You'd be like, cool, I'm going to get rid of a couple of these power fists because they're irrelevant, and the guys that reroll wounds are actually really good. So having a variety of stuff within the unit is really good because it allows you to sort of take casualties in such a way that you never really lose the effectiveness of the unit. Awesome. What would you remove first as you turn? Wow, you just asked the question that I'd already was in response. That's fun. Roomba said, as far as the CSM Codex goes, there seems to be some hype over 8 detachments that will be included. It seems a little odd since 9th edition had 9 different factions included. That is interesting, because they kind of need 1 for each legion. And then they're going to want 1 for Creation's Bile, 1 for Red Corsairs, and 1 for Vashdor. So that's quite a few. I don't know how they're going to streamline that. They might just get rid of a few. They might just... Because now that it's not necessarily Night Lord's detachment or Alpha Legion detachment, they'll be called like, the Subversionists, and they'll be called the, Night Terrors, or, whatever they call the detachments. So the fact that they're doing that kind of means you don't actually require 1 for everything. You could probably not have a Red Corsairs detachment, and people running Red Corsairs, they just pick one of the detachments to be their Red Corsairs. So I think it's fine. Same with like the Vashdor detachment. Like, what's the difference between the Vashdor detachment and the Iron Warriors detachment? Like, they're both demon engine centric, they're both vehicle heavy. Like, they're probably going to play more or less the same. So I think they could probably roll a few into each other, and that would be fine. And I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably end the stream soon, and then the next stream that I do, we'll actually pull out the 9th edition book, and we'll look at all of the different factions that were represented and how they would go porting those over to 10th edition. Like, we'll look at all of the different relics that they had and be like, which ones of these relics would work in 10th edition? Which ones of these Legion traits would work in 10th edition, and how would they have to change in order to work? So that'll be a really fun stream. I think that could be kind of cool. So we'll do that next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck on another real quick ad. I'm going to finish this can of Jack Daniels, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of these, and we're going to pick a winner. So remember that the winner, whoever has the most interesting and thought-inspiring comment, gets this pack of dice. So we'll go through, we'll pick that, and we'll announce them live on the stream in just a moment. We're just going to jump into a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high-quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today. Alrighty guys, we're back. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick scroll through the comments and pick out a winner. So we had a few comments about team events. They were good. Thoughts on the upcoming TV show. That was an interesting one. So currently we've got Dale. Paint schemes, that was okay. If all these were deleted. This is probably not thrilling content right now, me scrolling through reading reading these comments and not providing much commentary, but let's keep plugging along. Dawn of War, that was a fun little side track that we took. Motivation to Paint, that was a fun one. what was that one about? The one about if I had to play another faction. Oh, if World Eaters was suddenly deleted from the game, what faction? That was an interesting one. Oh, there's a question here which I missed, which was what would be your top tips for a player attending his first tournament? So I'll quickly answer that one because that's a good question. Be open-minded. Have your expectations set low. You're probably going to get smashed in every game if it's your first tournament. Go in there with an open mind. Try to learn as much as you can, and just have as much fun as you can. Don't take it too seriously. Just fuck around. Have fun with it. Tournaments literally changed my life. Like almost all of my people that I consider close friends, some of them which I'd take a bullet for, are all met through tournaments. Right? It's such a magical thing if you approach it with the right mindset. If you approach it with too much of a win at all costs competitive, cutthroat energy, it's not going to be enjoyable. Whereas if you approach it as here's an opportunity for me to engage socially with a bunch of like-minded people, meet some new people, make some friends, tournaments are absolutely amazing. So that would be my advice, is just go in open-minded and have fun. Have as much fun, have a laugh, joke around, be silly, and you'll make a ton of friends. What else have we got here? Who would I want to play in the TV series? That's good. I kind of feel like the "Are you free Wednesday, Arvo?" is a funny question to ask. That's one of my friends, Mark. He could have just texted me that question, but he's like, no, he's going to ask it in the live stream. So I kind of want to reward that with a prize, but no, I won't because he's a mate. If he wants dice, he can just have some. Trader Army, Trader Primarch, do I think is going to return? There's a good one. Favorite exercise to do while waiting for your opponent? That's a good one. Who asked the question about exercise? Oh, I think it was Dalton asking about the shadow boxing versus things. That was good. Lots of people asking about the Venom Crawlers, the Helldrakes. Got one down here from Chaos Rimbo. Any thoughts about the female custodies in the new codex? I do have some thoughts, but they'll probably get me removed from YouTube, so we won't go there. That's fine. I think a lot of people take this a little bit too seriously. If there wants to be female custodies, sure. It's a narrative, sure. Each to their own. I think the winner is going to be the winner for the best comment. I think it's going to be Alias 2002. If World Eaters was suddenly deleted from the game and from memory, what army would you be playing instead? That's a good one. I'll just double check in case there's any others there. Yeah, it's either that or Dale Kilpatrick with the "What are your thoughts on the upcoming Amazon TV show with Henry Cavill?" Between those two, so we've got Dale and Alias. What we're going to do is I'm actually going to roll the dice, because those are both fantastic comments. So I don't know which one I prefer. So, as a wargamer, I like to let the dice decide for me. So, I've got a dice here. Does that show up on the camera there? Alright. This... No, that's way too shiny. I need one of my blog dice, because they're designed specifically for this purpose. Give us 2 seconds. Alright. This dice here. So, what we're going to do is we're going to roll this dice. On a 1, 2, or a 3, Dale Kilpatrick is going to be our winner. So 1, 2, or 3, that's you, Dale. And on a 4, 5, or 6, Alias is going to be our winner. Alright, you ready? Here we go. That is a 1. So that means that Dale Kilpatrick is going to be the winner of these Blog for the Blood God dice. So Dale, if you're still in the chat, reach out to me, let me know your details, and I'll post them out to you ASAP. Find me on Facebook's probably the easiest way to do it. Just go to Blog for the Blood God on Facebook and send me a PM or whatever. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I had a great time here. I got a lot of work done, and it was a lot of fun chatting to you guys. So we will definitely do this again. I'm looking to do these streams a little bit more frequently because they're fun, easy content to create, and I like the engagement with you guys. It's a lot of fun. It's a good way to spend the night when the missus is out. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'll definitely see you guys in the next one. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'm going to leave you with my favorite ad.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.